CBS's 60 Minutes host Scott Pelley went head-to-head with Moms for Liberty co-founders Tina Desovich and Tiffany Justice in an interview that aired on Sunday. Let's watch.
There are rogue teachers in America's classrooms right now.
Rogue teachers.
Rogue teachers.
Parents
Correct.
send their children to school to be educated, not indoctrinated into ideology.
What ideology are they being indoctrinated into?
Let's just say children in America cannot read.
They often dodged questions with talking points.
You're being evasive.
But conservative media personality Megyn Kelly quickly defended the parents' rights group, blasting Pelley on her podcast.
Unbelievable. I'm ashamed of you, Scott Pelley. I'm ashamed of you. You're disgusting. You failed America's children. I'm glad you feel so good about yourself. But my kids and the kids of anybody who's got young ones who are in elementary school or middle school are the ones who are going to pay the penalty for the, using your favorite word, disinformation you put out on CBS News last night. Mike Wallace is rolling over in his grave. Ed Bradley, too.
News outlet Mother Jones tore into the organization's co-founders, writing that they had a chance to explain themselves, but it didn't go well. According to the write-up, the pair failed to describe the core mission of the organization, writing that they, quote, repeatedly struggled to explain their platform beyond empty talking points that have fueled the culture war in schools. They also failed to present facts to back up various claims. That is in the view of Mother Jones. So, sure, I don't know that this interview went the best for the Moms for Liberty group. If you're going to make sweeping statements about ideological indoctrination, it behooves you to show up with compelling examples. I would advise people, look, I have a lot of criticisms of various school districts and things going on there. I think there are ample policy decisions being made in schools that are worthy of some serious scrutiny. I don't know whether that, one need not make sweeping claims and can just say this is not good or this is not good or that is not good, rather than trying to say it's all ideological or then some. Lately, the Moms for Liberty type or school district activist parents groups, people have really focused on this idea of like sexual indoctrination. And look, they can point to a number of books with graphic images and themes that I suspect they have members who are parents that don't want those books in school, et cetera. And, you can discuss what should be done about that without making, I guess, more sweeping claims.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly right. There are a lot of disagreements about what should be taught at various age levels. I have those conversations all the time with close friends and loved ones who are teachers who teach high school, where the issue isn't whether or not something's really appropriate in terms of like sex, but there's a lot of stuff in the world, and you have to filter it down and figure out what's most important. And these are really fascinating, important, philosophical and intellectual conversations. That's not what this organization seems to be about. It seems to be having a really specific, prurient interest in sexuality in children. And in this interview, there was an attempt to get them to kind of own this idea of being interested in grooming and accusing teachers of grooming. But Pelley asked, about that. What do they mean by teachers and librarians saying that they're grooming kids? And again, they were evasive, leading Pelley to ask, grooming does not seem like a word you want to take on, pushing back. But it seems like there is an obvious kind of political appetite and political interest in making exactly what you describe as these big sweeping claims that have an effect on stigmatizing a broad population and, frankly, justifying stripping funding from school districts where people do have educational challenges. Some kids aren't up to grade level, and I don't know how those are going to be helped by draining public resources from those institutions. These women, if they want, can homeschool their kids. They can enroll their kids in private institutions. Megyn Kelly, certainly until recently, was sending her daughter to a very elite girls' school in New York to spend at private institution that costs tens of thousands of dollars a year. Those are options that people have, at least rich people have, for their kids. But this does, the narrative, the broad sweeping narratives that are attached to public schools do seem to have the goal of not just making discrete changes in a kid's education, but to undermining the integrity of those institutions in the first place.
Yeah, I frankly think this direction that parents' rights groups have gone down in terms of being obsessed with this whole grooming idea has gotten in the way of a lot of more legitimate criticisms of certain public school districts. I was just reading back through stories I had written a few years ago when I spent a lot more of my, before Rising, I spent a lot more of my time primarily on an education beat looking at policies on campuses and schools. And I wrote a lot of these stories where there would be like, so I just pulled this one up again. This was in Seattle, where they had a proposal to force, and this, I think this was the city forcing this on the school district. I'd have to look more closely, but to teach that, to require in the curriculum that math is that math is used to justify economic oppression, and reinforces that math itself reinforces inherent inequality, and that standardized testing is deliberately designed to be racist. Like, these are very debatable propositions that should not be assumed from the standpoint of the curriculum, that that's just how you're supposed to instruct kids. And in fact, the whole idea that standardized testing is a specifically bad or even racist way to measure success has, I think, been a pernicious idea that, in fact, even many leftists debate and disagree with, and think the move away from standardized testing has actually been harmful to marginalized kids because of all the ways to measure ability or to gain advancement throughout the school system or to qualify for higher ed. It is not, I'm not saying it's fair, but it's actually, it's been argued is superior to a lot of the other even more subjective things that tend to advantage wealthier people. It's that kind of stuff, or the oppression hierarchy, DEI kind of adjacent things that have made their way into some school districts that I think pretty much everybody outside very small teacher activist circles think are kind of not great ideas, or at least very debatable ideas, and shouldn't be the backbone of a curriculum. That was, I think, the parents' rights groups were on much more solid ground objecting to some of that stuff, and the kind of
look, I have a hard time. I have a hard time getting angry at even that, because to the extent that there are conservative arguments about politics being better when they're local and communities having control over what their kids do, I don't know why these are national conversations. I grew up with parents who were teachers who were very dissatisfied at times with my own education. I had teachers that equivocated on the morality of slavery. I didn't go and then start a pogrom to try to change on a federal basis what was taught in schools or not. I mean, there is, I think, some parental responsibility that is really being abdicated here by parents who expect teachers to parrot their own ideology, instead of understanding that parents for years, including, I gotta say, a lot of Black parents who have had frustrations with how history has been told and how Black people have been portrayed in the classroom for decades, not to mention the segregated nature of schools themselves. Until my father was a middle schooler, has disadvantaged, that was disadvantaged Black kids in our own self-perception. But that corrective happened in the home. And so, I understand there's some issues that are educational issues. Are you getting the right quality of education, et cetera? But a lot of this does seem to be an effort, frankly, to stigmatize LGBT people, which they denied in the course of the interview, but to press a social agenda more broadly, and using children and people's sensitivities around kids to do it, which doesn't seem to be working very well as they're getting more of a platform and more exposed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the solutions are best left to the local level. I also don't think everything should be made into a federal issue, but Moms for Liberty would probably say while they're a national organization, they have chapters all over the country, and I mean, they are trying to call attention within the local area to what they say are legitimate concerns in the schools. I think some of them are legitimate and others are not, but we continue to debate it here on the show. More Rising right after this.